Hello. Hi.
Hi. Are you talking
Hi.
to me?
I'm talking to you. What's up,
Hi, Guy.
everybody? I'm Guy, and that's Matt Maiocco, and we're on Matt's YouTube channel and my YouTube channel, and it is a live stream Tuesday night.
Well, we're making history here, aren't we?
Yeah, what is that history, you think, for
I don't
generations?
know. We will be able to tell history only after the fact of what exactly it was we did here tonight.
You're reminding me, it sounds a lot like Hamilton, actually,
Yeah,
the musical.
I was thinking more of the Gettysburg Address, but
That's
yeah,
right.
something,
That's right.
something along those lines.
Well, this is great. I've for people who are new, I feel like for me, I get people who are new to me because of YouTube. Probably not a lot of people that are new to Matt because of Matt's elevated standing. But years ago, Matt, we used to collaborate on radio,
Yes, we
and
did.
now we're here together. So this is great. You launched your YouTube channel. You still do all of your writing, your TV, your podcasting for NBC Sports Bay Area, and then you started YouTubing, and people are subscribing like crazy.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm not in the Guy Haberman class, but yeah, I just figured uh, with the writing I do at NBCSportsBayArea.com, the podcasting with Jennifer Lee Chan, 49ers Talk, TV, pre and post, all that stuff, I just wasn't doing enough. So might as well add a YouTube channel to my repertoire.
This is great.
You know what? There's comments coming in. I'm gonna put on my readers just so I can see what people are saying.
Oh, okay. You can put a couple up if you want. I don't know if you have the power. Maybe I have the power. I do want to say, Matt, and I know you have partaken in my sponsor, Puesto. I am brought to you by Puesto Mexican Artisan Kitchen. They have 2 locations at Levi Stadium, Matt. So if there's a electrical delay or some sort of delay at Levi Stadium, you can get out of the press box on Sunday. Go to one of the 2 Puesto locations. They have Santa Clara outside the stadium. They got Concord. They got Orange County. They got San Diego. Margaritas are incredible. Speaking of something, maybe a post-game margarita for Maiocco.
Ooh,
I've seen
yeah.
him partake. A little fresh strawberry. They got the fresh lime juice. They make fresh tortillas at the stadium. The burritos, the tacos, the chicharrones, the chilaquiles, the flautas, the taquitos, the quesadillas, prime
That is
rib tacos.
enthusiasm right there.
Well, it's sincere. I mean, I love the
Yeah,
place. It's fantastic.
absolutely.
I know you've been. So anyway, I just want to say thanks to Puesto for their sponsorship, as always, of my show, and we got Maiocco in the mix, so it's great. Maiocco has been in a Puesto, I know, and it's a great place to hang. Like, they got great drinks, so highly recommend Puesto. Everybody, if you're going to the game, go to Puesto. Okay, thanks for allowing me to. Anything you want to promote, Matt?
No, I think I already just did it with 49ers pre and post game show, all that. I have a sit down interview scheduled with Patrick Willis tomorrow. I believe he's getting his ring of excellence from the Pro Football Hall of Fame on Sunday during the game or halftime of the game. So Patrick is in town, and week 4 in the books, and I always like it how NFL people we break the schedule up into quarters. The first 4 games, the next 4, they look at them in 4 4-game blocks. And now that there's 17 games, I guess that final game is either just a throwaway or that's when the postseason begins for some teams. Last year for the 49ers, it was a throwaway because they already had the number 1 seed clinched. But the second block of 4 games really interests me, Guy, because they went through 2-2. They shouldn't have been 2-2. At the very worst, they should have been 3-1. And now look at this block: 2 NFC West teams, followed by the Chiefs on a long week. However, the Chiefs are coming off their bye week. 49ers have that Thursday game against Seattle, and then the long week. But the Chiefs have the bye week, so there goes that built-in rest advantage. And then the next week they play the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are coming off their bye week as well. So a very critical, I think, block of 4 games coming up where they can get by at 2-2. No one's going to lose any sleep. Well, I know the 49ers fan base expected to be better than 2-2, but 2-2, and they just they hold serve. But 3-1, and then I think they're in business at that point if they go 3-1 in this next 4 game block.
especially when you look at the NFC right now, which you could, I mean, there's different, mathematically it's deep, right? We could debate whether the Vikings are going to win the NFC or a first place level team, or whether the Bucks are, whether the Saints are. But mathematically, I would say there's 13 teams maybe still that think that they can go make the playoffs. Even the maybe the Rams still do, right? 14 teams.
Yeah, I mean,
So
the Rams are probably thinking, "Hey, once we get Puka Nacua back and Cooper Cup, I mean, the only or let's try this one again. The only winless team are the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're in the AFC, but yeah, no, I think the NFC is wide open. The thing with the Vikings, we saw them play up close. The 49ers easily could have won that game. 49ers made so many mistakes, but they're unbeaten, and they basically have not basically, they have a 3-game lead for the number 1 seed on the 49ers because they're up by 2 games and they have the tiebreaker as well. So, even though there's 14 no, see, math is not an easy thing. 13 games left in the regular season. It's going to be difficult for the 49ers to supplant the Vikings as the number 1 seed.
Yeah, it feels like they could trip over themselves to 10 wins right now, which, 10 wins is very much in reach for the 49ers. But I think part of this whole thing is it just feels like they need to be playing better football. And they need their defense to be better, right? I mean, like
that's special teams. I think they need all areas. I really think. I mean, I don't think that offense is great shakes either. When you think about what they've done in the red zone, which isn't much. Last year they had the best red zone offense in the league. This year, they've struggled. They're getting better, I think, on third downs. And then defensively, not a real good indicator, I don't think, on Sunday against the Patriots, what they are all about defensively, because Patriots really were toothless. They didn't have anything going on. So let's see if that pass rush shows up in these future games. And if they can stop teams on third downs like they weren't able to do in the first 3 weeks of the season, or at least weeks 2 and 3 against the Vikings and the Rams. And then special teams, man, it's just been a special teams blunder every game. And this last one didn't cost them, other than the only touchdown of the game was Patriots were put in position for that. But I think they need to tighten it up all the way around.
Yeah. I wish you could point to one. You can't even point to special teams and say, it's the special teams coach.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think
Isaac Garendo running up somebody's back and fumbling isn't Brian Schneider's fault.
Right. On his teammate. Yeah. That's not something like, oh, coach didn't tell me I need to hold on to the football. That's generally not coaching there. But some of the other stuff, the blocked punt, the giving up the fake punt, maybe the discipline of not being in their lanes on punt coverage. So some of that stuff, it can be coached up, but also you're dealing with a lot of young guys who probably have never really played too much special teams in their college careers. And so they're kind of learning the gravity of it too, that a game can change by missing a block or, getting outside of your gap or whatever the case may be.
Davante Adams wants a trade.
Oh, should we talk about Davante Adams and the 49ers? Can't you just see a guy? The 49ers trade Brandon Ayuk in his red shorts to the Raiders for Davante Adams.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you get asked about it a lot. This was a conversation in the offseason for sure. Antonio Pierce was at Arizona State with Brandon Ayuk. Where is Davante Adams from? But the Bay Area, on and on and on. So what's your answer to that question?
Well, it's funny because when I went to Las Vegas for the 49ers Raiders preseason game, one of the things that caught my eye was Brandon Ayuk having a very long conversation with Antonio Pierce. But here's why it won't happen. The 49ers signed Brandon Ayuk to a long-term extension that took a lot of stuff happened to get there. If you look at him, Davante Adams is 31 years old. Brandon Ayuk is 26 years old. And in order for let's just say it's a straight up trade or whatever the case may be, if the 49ers were to acquire Davante Adams, it would end up costing them in dollar amounts, cap dollars and real dollars. It would end up costing them $10 million more this year, $24 million more next year, and then $20 million more on top of what they were going to pay Brandon Ayuk salary cap wise. It would pay them $20 million more in 2026. So that's a total of $54 million more that the 49ers would have to pay to acquire Davante Adams, when they still have to account for Brock Purdy's contract at the end of this year. And they have some big time free agents who are scheduled free agents. And the guy that I'm just becoming more and more convinced this guy's just going to continue to be a really freaking good player is Diamador Lenore. And he's scheduled for unrestricted free agency, as is Charvarius Ward, as is Talanoa Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw, Aaron Banks. So on top of that, the rising salaries of other guys like Kittle and Warner and Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey.
Are they keeping Debo, right? Are they keeping
Debo.
Debo Samuel?
Yeah. So I just think that it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I can see why people would think like, oh man, Brandon Ayuk's gotten off to a slow start. He hasn't produced like he did last year. But the other part of it too, you'd be bringing in Davante Adams midstream and trying to teach him the offense. And I kind of dismiss that whole idea out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, if Brandon Ayuk hadn't held out, it wouldn't have been much of a story. If Brandon Ayuk had, 4 touch, if Brandon Ayuk had Jauan Jennings numbers,
oh, people would be dancing in the streets.
People would be talking like the Niners got a deal, right?
Yeah. They did get a deal with Jauan Jennings.
They did get a deal.
$15 million over 2 years. Wow. I mean, he's played lights out. Hey, guy on my 49ers overreactions every Tuesday at NBCSportsBayArea.com. One of the overreactions, well, they're either reactions or overreactions, was that Jauan Jennings is the best pass catcher that the 49ers have right now, the best wide receiver on the team. And I said, is that an overreaction? Right now, it is not. He is dynamic, and it's not like he's just being schemed open. I mean, this is a guy who can win. He's one of their better receivers at beating man coverage. He's finding those seams and in zone defenses, and he's making contested catches. He's putting together quite a season.
He already has more catches than he had last year in the regular season.
And more receiving yards.
And more yards. And yeah, it's made me wonder if I definitely put him in a category of good, wow, that's a number 3 receiver right there on a championship team.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird because they don't have another guy like him. He's not a number 3. It's not like the Texans where they have just 3 clear cut, because Debo complicates things because he's different. And right now, Ayuk complicates things because he's not producing.
Yeah.
So I would say, right. And you have Kittle, who's a tight end, but also a great pass catcher. One thing is clear. Brock really trusts him, right? To the point that last year, a lot of third down balls went his way, right? When you look at his career, even the last 2 years, he has a disproportionate amount of his catches go for first downs.
Yeah.
Because of his, I think because of his size in part.
Well, two reasons, right? Because the 49ers don't use a whole lot of multi-receiver sets.
Yeah.
So usually, a lot of times he's only out there on third downs. So if he's going to make a catch, it's going to be third and Jauan, and it's probably going to be a first down. But I think now, don't you think now, without Christian McCaffrey especially, they can use more combinations, more personnel groupings, and Jennings has definitely proved that he belongs out there more than just in 3 wide receiver sets. They can sprinkle him in. If Debo runs a deep route or Ayuk, they can pull them out and get Jennings in, and also do more 3 receiver sets on first and second downs too.
Well, it makes me wonder too, Matt, like when you look back, like, when you look at the leading receivers for the Niners, it's generally going to be 50 to 7, 55 to 65 catches. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's going to look different this year. I mean, if we had said it's going to look different this year, people would have said, yeah, Ayuk's going to catch 83 balls. But that's not the pace that he's on right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a lot. The volume isn't there. I mean, he's only been targeted 27 times, and he's caught
Ayuk,
21 passes.
Ayuk,
No, I'm
Jauan.
sorry, Jennings.
Yeah.
And so, like right now, he's the leading pass catcher, but because they have maybe the wide receivers get more balls this year without McCaffrey, because McCaffrey was 67 catches. So, how are they going to kind of incorporate that in? But at some point, you would think Brandon Ayuk will get his, and Deebo Samuel will get his. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing shakes out as far as the pass distribution.
Do you where do you fall on? Purdy's on a pace to surpass his yardage total from last year, and last year the Niners were first in the league in yards after catch. This year they're 31st in yards after catch.
That's crazy.
They were, so is it a small sample size? Is it, last year they threw it in the postseason some. When you're behind against Minnesota and you're playing that game with the Rams and then you're coming back, they have not been able to do a lot of the sit on the ball, take the air out of it in the fourth quarter thing. I guess what I'm asking you is, do you view the yardage total for Purdy as some stylistic change? Kyle Shanahan trusts his quarterback more. He's going to be a guy that throws it more, or is it just a function of odd circumstances for them this year?
I think it's a function of teams spending a great deal of time to figure out what the 49ers have done in the past and what do they like to do. Brandon Ayuk said it last week before the game. He said that he notices defenses are playing him differently because they know what the 49ers like to do. And he said specifically what Purdy and I like to do. After the game on Sunday, Brock Purdy talked a lot about how the Patriots safeties were anticipating the routes the 49ers were running, and they were basically going to spots. So the way I see it is I think the 49ers are a team that has been studied in and out. From the moment last season ended, every team on their schedule spent a lot of time looking at the 49ers. And I think those teams spent a lot of time looking at what the Chiefs did to the 49ers. So I think it's, man coverage, which the 49ers haven't excelled at beating. That's why they drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round. And so I think that teams have this idea of what the 49ers like to do. So I think they've started this season, the opposing defense is maybe a step ahead of the 49ers offense. And now the adjustment the 49ers are making is, okay, you're taking away the short and intermediate stuff. Now we're going to beat you over the top. And that's why I think you saw this disproportionate amount of deep throws that Brock Purdy aired out against the Patriots. And all that is by design now of like, okay, you're going to try to take this stuff away. We're going to beat you deep. And now it's, how honest do defenses have to play the 49ers? What adjustments do they make? And now it's kind of like 49ers have to try to stay a step ahead. Whereas I think early in the season, it's looked like to me that defenses have been a step ahead of the 49ers. So now it's a matter of them making that adjustment.
I mean, I love it in theory when when Purdy hits that back foot and the camera zooms back and he pulls it back, but it's not really what any of them are best at. It's not what Deebo's best at. It's not. Brock's got a lot of great. He can do it, but I really think the reason the 49ers have not hit many deep balls, they over the top go. It's funny. You look, Matt, and
they did. Two in this last. At least two in this last game. Deep one to Deebo, deep one to Jennings.
Yes, I'm saying like in the Shanahan era, they have they'll hit these huge plays, but they're like these over routes, right? They're not sideline over the shoulder type ball. And they don't, I've said them a lot. They don't hit them in practice either. And I think the reason is they just fundamentally don't have those types of receivers. It's not Deebo's strength. I would think Ayuk could do it, but we don't see it a lot from Ayuk.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be a Pearsall thing. I don't know. It's what Danny Gray came to do and it never worked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the guys that they've taken who have the speed don't have the other things that enable them to get on the field, or maybe that's all they have is the speed. And I mean, you can be as fast as, you can be Usain Bolt out there And if teams know that all they have to do is respect your speed, that you're not going to burn them in other ways, they can take that stuff away from you. So I don't know. I think it's about adapting. I think that I kind of enjoyed watching it on Sunday. I'm sure the
Same.
fans did too, to see that. I mean, he had a lot of time to throw on Sunday, and a lot of that was, the Patriots weren't doing a whole lot of blitzing. And when they did, I think they had some success at getting to Purdy, but the offensive line, I think, graded out very well. If we're going to use PFF as the measure, the offensive line graded out really well in that game. And the only sack of Purdy was on a play that, he kept alive for like 9 seconds before he was. I'm not joking.
I know you're not. I know.
Like 9 seconds.
I know. So, he's got one of these a week.
Yeah. Well, it's several of them, and that's an interesting thing. We saw that a lot in that Rams game where he was just running around, buying time. He keeps his eyes open. We saw the one play, I think it was the third down play inside the 5-yard line or inside the 10-yard line where, he's he's directing traffic to Kittle, and Kittle ends up making a nice diving catch. But there were several plays, even the touchdown that got called back to Juszczyk was another one of those plays, a second or third or fourth reaction play. So it's, I don't know enough about X's and O's to honestly be able to look at the all 22 and be fascinated by what I see. But I think that football junkies and coaches probably are, it'll be interesting to see what teams do defensively. And when you think about it, the next 2 games on the 49ers schedule are against defensive-minded head coaches who know the 49ers very, very well. Jonathan Gannon, formerly of the Eagles. I mean, he was the Eagles defensive coordinator the year that Brock Purdy got injured in the NFC Championship game. And then the next game, Mike McDonald, who has had the most success against Brock Purdy as any defensive coordinator in the league. And that was only in that one game, the Christmas night game, when the Ravens intercepted him 4 times. So, if there are 2 guys probably that have really a strong idea of what their plans should be going in to face Brock Purdy and the 49ers, it's these next 2 guys coming up. And then that's followed by Steve Spagnuolo.
The guy.
Yeah, the guy.
Yeah.
The guy that called up Brock Purdy after the Super Bowl to tell him how much he respects his game. So 3 really interesting matchups coming up. And Brock Purdy, he's so smart. He knows what he's seeing. He knows what he doesn't see. And one of the more fascinating points of the season was after that game in Minnesota, where he told Brian Flores, "Man, your scheme's crazy." And I read into that. It's like, man, this is a guy, Brock Purdy, who knows how to prepare, knows what he's seeing pre-snap, and then recognizing the rotations and, how the Vikings were able to just make him a split second slow, or, hesitate a split second on his decision making, because he had to identify what defense they really were in as opposed to what they were showing pre-snap. It's all part of the game. And I tell you, I think the 49ers have the right guy at quarterback to be able to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, I took that Brian Flores situation with Brock also to have meaning.
Mm-hmm.
You just use the word game. They play a game, but there's this other little game going on.
Yeah.
And, everyone always calls it chess. But what I saw when Purdy said that was a guy confident enough that he's not in the wrong room. Like,
right.
He's at the high stakes table, the high roller room, and he
Didn't
belongs there.
Didn't you almost get the sense that Purdy was saying, "Until we meet again"?
Yes. Like, he was confident. He was comfortable and confident. He lost, but he wasn't overwhelmed.
Right.
I thought it was really telling. I really, you're around him every single day. You've been around him every day since he came. He's always been understated in the way that he talks, but I've always thought he says stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to what he says, this year he feels to me like he is like he's a little more naturally himself, is the way it feels to me. And that's not necessarily just press conferences, but just watching him on the field. He's always been comfortable on the field though. Like, he's done the thing where he's smiling and he's pointing. But what's your read?
I think he's an interesting guy to cover because he really listens to questions and tries to give good answers. And it's not, some of it, is the cookie cutter stuff, but he will explain, what he sees out there on the field, and why he didn't throw that one pass against the Rams to Ayuk. He will take you through it through his eyes. What was happening, why was he holding the ball against the Patriots, what was going on. He will walk you through it. And to me, it's a guy who has extreme confidence in that. Hey, this is what I saw, and this is why I did this. This is why I threw this pass and didn't throw this pass. This is why I threw that pass to Ayuk in the end zone. Did not see Jabril Peppers. He made a play where he got deeper than he would have anticipated him getting with that defense. So he's chalking that up to experience. The other play, I didn't throw that ball again to Ayuk because I didn't know where the safety was. It was a busted coverage, and Ayuk broke off that route, but I wasn't aware. I wasn't going to let that thing fly because I didn't want it to be a turnover. Everything he says, you get the sense that he's filing it away in that mind of his, and the next time he sees it, he'll be able to capitalize. I mean, I remember Steve Young, whatever, 13 years in the league. And I'm still learning how to play quarterback. I'm still learning the X's and O's and the route concepts and defenses and all this stuff. Brock Purdy, are we forgetting? No, I don't think we are. 25 regular season starts. I mean, that's incredible. Not even 2 full seasons of playing in the NFL. And he's already solidified himself as, the 49ers franchise quarterback. And, other than his draft status, if you don't even look at where he was drafted, I don't think there's a sane person on the planet who wouldn't put him in the top 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks in the NFL. But he does. A lot of people are so reluctant to give him that credit because they don't want to look silly because, who's Brock Purdy? Number 262. You can't pick a quarterback at 262 and have him be, an all-pro type of player.
Yeah, I also think it's just the way he, like, when you don't have, I really think if we boil it down, 262 is such a huge part of it. But I've argued about this for years. It's so much fun having a young developing quarterback to cover is like the best thing because you can have all these conversations. I think fundamentally, if his arm was stronger, people would be quicker to, which, by the way, doesn't even bother me. Like, the guys with strong arms that succeed are exceptions to the rule. The guys without plus arms, right? And I'm talking like Josh Allen's a plus arm. Brady turned into a plus arm, but and I hadn't thought about, it'll be interesting this week, Matt. Brady is here, and he was here for a preseason game, but this is his first 49ers broadcast. And I get the sense that I wonder if he will reveal something that he hasn't revealed already this week about almost becoming a 49er or something along those lines, right? Kyle reaching out when Brock was hurt, that sort of thing. I feel like something's coming out this week.
Yeah. My guess is he doesn't, because I don't think he'd want to make it about himself. Where I thought you were going was, I thought you were going to say that he's going to give the viewer some incredible insight into what distinguishes Brock Purdy, and maybe through his experience being the guy who was under the radar. I don't know, I forget what it was like. I don't even know what it was like in New England when he took over for Bledsoe. I'm sure there are a lot of people there going, you can't give it to this guy. I mean, he wasn't a first round draft pick. Drew Bledsoe was. So I don't know if anything will come out about that, but it will be interesting because that preseason game you're referring to, he just did that as a dress rehearsal. What he said on that broadcast, I forget what it was, a Saints game. He was in the booth, and it was him and Kevin Burkhardt. They did the game from Levi Stadium like it was a game that was televised, but only it wasn't televised. So it was just a dress rehearsal to get Tom Brady ready for when the season starts. So now that he's on this game with the 49ers, I don't know that he would reveal anything along those lines, but we do know for a fact that even when Brock Purdy had the elbow injury and the 49ers weren't sure exactly when he'd be ready, Kyle Shanahan was completely set that whenever Brock Purdy is healthy, he's the starting quarterback unless Tom Brady wants to play for the 49ers. And that was a conversation he had with Brock Purdy. And I don't think Brock liked it all that much. I don't know how he could have argued at that point. That sample size was really small. But at that point, they had already decided it's not Trey Lance, it's Brock Purdy, unless Tom Brady is available.
I know we watch it every day, but gosh, it feels like no team, and like Browns fans would say, wait a second, but no team almost took the right guy and then took the wrong guy and then got the right guy and then had the wrong guy. It just feels like, I don't know. It feels crazy. It's really crazy what we've seen.
I'll go back to, and I look stupid now, so I don't even know why I'm saying this, but after the 2019 season, when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, and Tom Brady did not have a good 2019 season with the Patriots, I was of the opinion the 49ers made the right decision by keeping Garoppolo.
You weren't alone.
Yeah, and at the time I was like, well, gosh, look at Brady's age, look at Garoppolo's age. 49ers went to the Super Bowl with Garoppolo. He had a fine season. And boy, I can guarantee you the 49ers really regret not doing that. I mean, they have made it clear that they regret. I thought Jimmy would continue to build on it, but I just don't know what. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan had a pretty good read on Garoppolo. Whether it's the work he put in, how he saw the game was just different. Jimmy was accurate. He throws a nice ball, but he just made too many mistakes and maybe just didn't see the game the way, obviously he didn't see the game the way Kyle Shanahan wanted his quarterback or wants his quarterback to see the game.
Yeah, it felt like he plateaued. I know we got to wrap it up here in a second. I thought you made me think of something today though that I'd been thinking, I call college football games. So every week I'm at a college football game and I'm a big college football fan anyway. And you made a video this week, Matt, about how Purdy, the lesson for scouts and teams in drafting after the Purdy experience is maybe you should be looking for system quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And the one thing I want to say is that's an NFL conversation we've been having. What really made it click for me, what you said, was thinking about there are so many, like in college football every year, there's 10 good quarterbacks. But now with the portal, experienced coaches that have good systems can get experienced quarterbacks from lower levels of football, plug them in right away. And while they may not have the most dynamic offense in the country, their system more often than not can win out over, in college, every week you're playing somebody who's like quarterback's not quite there yet, or the coach is on the hot seat. There's so many variables in college football. And I see it in college football. No one hardly ever talked about system quarterbacks in college football other than air raid quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much to your point, because it feels like every great quarterback would complement whatever system he was in. That it's almost like there is no such thing as a non-system quarterback.
Yeah, and I would say this, Caleb Williams was far and away, he was the number one pick in the draft for the past year and a half, even before the draft.
Yeah.
He was but if you look at his games, I mean, what you see is just tremendous physical ability. But I bet you all of his highlight plays, if you just watch the highlight film of his 10 best plays from his last season at USC, how many of them would be deep throws to a wide open receiver? How many of them would be him running around, buying time, and making a throw down the field, sidearm or whatever? All tremendous physical gifts that are on display. But to be successful in the NFL, I mean, some of these throws that Purdy makes are just maybe on a different level, but every bit as fun to watch, because when he's starting his throwing motion, you have no idea who he's throwing to, or if the guy's open, and he throws guys open. And I think that is, if you're a quarterback in the NFL, you got to be able to make plays as they're drawn up in the system. Your offensive coaches are really smart people. They draw things up for a reason. They draw them up the way that coach has determined is the best way to beat the opposition. And if you don't let it fly, even though there's not a window there, but you're throwing to a spot that you expect the guy to be, I mean, that's what quarterbacking is. And I haven't seen, I'm not an expert on quarterback play or anything like that, but like Jaden Daniels is a guy that's put up unbelievable numbers, and he just the eyeball test, man, he looks better now than CJ Stroud did a year ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's I mean, did you see him? Did you call him in his games at Arizona State?
At Arizona State, but I mean that he's a different player.
Yeah.
He's a better player, and I thought he was really good. His freshman year, he showed a lot of promise, and then their offense just never got going. And you just thought, like, that's how his career will go, and that's where I would go back to Caleb on your point. He's a great example because USC replaced him with a more systematic quarterback, Miller Moss, who's throwing for 300 yards a game right now. And so that really works because he is operating within the offense. Now, he has blue chip receivers, but I think Caleb's a great example of, in a better system, he would be like, he needs help, right?
Yeah.
And if you put him with Andy Reid or Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, I think it'd be incredible.
Well, I can't speak to that because maybe he's just not running the system.
Yeah, you may be right about that.
And I'm not. I mean, with Caleb Williams, I think it can be learned. I don't think it's, when quarterbacks enter the NFL, they're not a finished product. So what I would say about Caleb Williams is he's a tremendous talent. He was in college, he still is, but until he learns how to run that system, he's not going to be able to succeed. He can't, these quarterbacks can't just run around and try to play hero ball all the time. If he doesn't learn how to play in a system, he will never be a good NFL quarterback. And so, the whole system quarterback thing is kind of ridiculous because every good quarterback is a system quarterback.
I've heard is a really fast processor is Shedeur Sanders.
Is that right?
Yeah. His offensive coordinator, Pat Shermer, obviously was in the NFL. And I was talking to an assistant coach last week. He said, when you watch him, you can really tell that he sees it. He really sees it. He just doesn't have an offensive line.
Yeah.
But he's going to be a top 5 pick.
Really?
But he has all these highlight play. I think, we'll see. We can. A couple comments, Matt. Before we go, question, Matt, what's your feel around the team? Are they divided or together?
Oh, I think they're together. I think they have too good of leadership to ever be divided. The whole, I don't know if that's in reference to like the Brandon Ayuk stuff, which is kind of weird. But Brandon's not a big, he's not a leader on that team. But guys like Fred Warner, George Kittle, Trent Williams, even, Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is the guy who gives the speech on the field on Saturdays before games. They have really good leadership. And so I don't see that locker room ever becoming divided because of just the quality leaders that they have on that squad. And you know what? And Brock Purdy he's at the top of the list too, man. He might look like a choir boy, rolling in on a skateboard or something, but he's got a little juice to him. He's a pretty good leader.
He's got more commercials than anybody else too.
Yes,
do you think Sam Darnold is for real? I mean, I think Sam is finally the guy that he wasn't able to be in Carolina and New York. That's what I think.
Well, let's go back to what we were just talking about. I think Sam Darnold is finally running a system.
Yeah.
And I think that Sam Darnold had the benefit of watching Brock Purdy. I think he benefited from that a lot, while also being in the 49ers system and kind of seeing the minutia, the attention to detail, what it takes to be a good NFL quarterback. And now he's with a coach in Kevin O'Connell, who's really good. I think Sam is talented beyond belief, and people were throwing stones at me last year for saying that. But his problems in the past have been like kind of the mental meltdown, the dumb play here and there. So he hasn't made it yet. Will he revert back at some point? Will he give opposing defenses some opportunities for turnovers? Yes, but I think he's for the first time in his career, he is set up to succeed because of last year kind of sitting it out, taking a deep breath, and then the situation he's in this year. So remains to be seen, but this is his opportunity to shine.
Being a good quarterback on a bad team is really hard.
Yeah.
Just like being a performing worker with a bad in any job. It's just
and the other part,
it's
like
hard.
I think Bryce Young went through this. I think when you're a high draft pick on a bad team, now you feel the need to do it all yourself and play hero ball and run around and do things. And what happens when that happens? You make mistakes and you cost your team games.
Yeah. I hesitate to say this. You see Brock make plays in games that are like 2 or 3 score games that you go, like that throw to Ayuk in the end zone that got picked off the other day. If it's a tie game, is Brock throwing that ball? I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he just didn't see Peppers. But you can see there's some of that in Brock where it's like if you were on a bad team and nothing mattered, everything was just about trying to hit home runs. I guess what happens? You strike out more too.
Well, he had that experience at Iowa State.
Yeah.
He was on some good teams at Iowa State. He was on some average teams at Iowa State, and he was on some bad teams at Iowa State. So he's been through that. And that, I think, that experience of not throwing to receivers who are running down the field with not a defender within 10 yards of them, those experiences helped him a lot when he came to the 49ers and came to the NFL.
Last one, a super chat from, I think we split $2.50 each on this, Matt, maybe it's 2. Google gets their cut. But $5 on the super chat that says, you two are my favorite people.
Oh, wow.
To hear about my Niners from. Keep doing this. And Puesto was great. So
awesome.
There you go.
Love to hear it.
I may get that money and then I'll Venmo you.
I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah. You're monetizing now though, Matt. You are monetizing. Go like and subscribe if you haven't already. Growing quickly, the Matt Maiocco Experience over on YouTube. All right. Anything else?
I think that's it. Guy, thank you for having me on and setting all this up and talking me through this whole brave new world of YouTube. So I appreciate it. And I've always, when we first talked about this, I was like, you're the guy I want to attach my wagon to.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm serious. I really,
nice
I have a lot of respect for you. It's great whenever I turn on a college football game and I hear your voice, and I always know that you're true to who you are, and you just don't say stuff to say stuff.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Matt. It means a lot. I've always loved getting to hang out with you, and the fact that you want to do this was awesome. So thank you.
All right, and thanks to everybody who took time out of their busy Tuesday evening to watch.
Yeah, or later whenever you watched it. All right, so Matt's got to sit down with
Patrick Willis.
Patrick Willis coming up this week.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic.
Is that it?
That's all it has to be. It's all it needs to be. All right.